Skulking from one shadow to the next, I trailed behind him as he walked through the remains of the city. My honed steps, dark clothing, and stealth-related skills ensured I wasn't noticed. His name was George, a simple name for a simple man. I didn't know George firsthand, but I wasn't going to recognize everyone on the list. 100 names, 100 targets. I'd been young back then. Or should I say we, couldn't have been expected to keep track of every piece of scum who crossed our paths, let alone the ones who hid behind desks, unable to face what they'd signed up for. No, I didn't remember meeting George, but if there was anything I could trust in this new world, it was the quest. The quest hadn't lied to me yet. George stopped to talk to one of the goons on the street, some idiot in a beanie and beat-up old coat, probably handing George some of the money he'd made for the week. George seemed like a connected guy, walking from shop to shop, chatting with the owners as they closed for the day. I'd only spent a little time in this part of the city, but I knew most of the people who lived around here were crooked in one way or another. Not evil, just trying to get by, and sometimes that meant doing things you didn't want to do to make it to the next day. I couldn't fully relate, but who was I to judge? My day-to-day involved killing people, or waiting to kill people. Finally, George left the street and walked back to his apartment building. I could have waited longer, but I wasn't complaining about the way the night got darker and the streets cleared out. George must have felt untouchable. He walked with a purpose, shoulders back and head held high as though he was the most powerful man on these streets, like no one would dare try to jump or rob him. Skills could do that to a man. Make them think they were invincible, that is. I kept following at a safe distance until George turned down one of the side streets. No one else was around, and picking up the pace, I decided this was the best time to strike. I jumped up and onto the nearest roof, running directly above where George would be walking. I scaled the brick wall, keeping to the shadows as much as possible. I should still have been invisible in the darkness of the shadows around me, but George stopped and turned his head to the left and right.
Whoever you are, let's fucking go! I haven't got all night!
He yelled, looking around wildly, trying to find me. From his expression, I knew he still couldn't tell where I was, but it looked like his paranoia from his previous life had earned him a skill good enough to notice when he was being followed. I contemplated leaving and trying again later, but I'd waited long enough already. Another day wasn't going to help me when I didn't even know what skill he had. No. George might not have been on my personal kill list, but the quest didn't let me skip names. His death meant one more step towards finding the others. So, too bad for George. Tonight was his turn to die. I threw a dagger towards George. I leapt down as the first dagger flew towards him and threw a second directly after the first. Neither dagger packed much of a punch individually, but each was fast and sharp enough to alert George of my intentions as I discarded attempts at stealth and raced down the wall. I threw more daggers, a couple of which pierced his skin, proving he wasn't as untouchable as he thought. He swatted most of them away, a glow encasing his hands until they looked like old-fashioned boxing gloves. I rained knives down on him, and he scuttled out of their path, barely avoiding the torrent. Still, I hadn't expected to kill him with thrown daggers alone. They'd bought me the time to get close enough to strike him up close. George was target number 43 after all, and most of these assholes refused to make this easy. Faster than George could fully stand up, I was on the ground in front of him, my legs quaking from the quick descent. I rose and slashed the knife into his thigh.
Fuck!
George shouted, feeling the cool breeze on his now bloody and exposed leg. He swung a glowing fist toward me, but I was already behind him, plunging another dagger into the small of his back. Another dagger appeared in my empty right hand as I drove the one in my left hand into his hip. He swung around and I dodged his glowing fists. All the while, my daggers ate away at his skin and clothes. We traded blows, his swings wide enough to keep me at a distance, but not fast enough to land. Near screaming in rage, George spun around and tried to grab me, but I jumped out of his reach. George was already riddled with holes, some of the sharp steel punch daggers still sticking out of him as he started to look for an exit as he realized this was a losing battle. With no fight left in him, George finally stopped swinging and collapsed to the ground, his body likely growing tired from the loss of blood. To George's credit, he could take a hit.